So I wanted to introduce Maria Town, who came from Washington this morning to close our conference today. And Washington is a really small world. Everybody says it's a village. It really is. I met Maria because she used to actually have the cube next to Serena Lowe at ODEP. So it's a very, very small world. But we're so happy to have Maria in this role. And she's brand new to the role, so be kind. So she's currently serving as Associate Director for Public Engagement at the White House, where she is tasked with addressing the needs of the disability community. She is our liaison to the rest of the White House, the Domestic Policy Council, the Office of Public Engagement at the White House. And prior to her appointment, she was a policy advisor at the U.S. Department of Labor, Office of Disability Employment Policy. She is from Louisiana, and if you have some time and you really enjoy good humor and good writing, check out her blog. So without further ado, Maria Town.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Thank you all so much for having me here today. I really can't tell you what an honor it is to speak with you. Before I started at the White House, when I was working at the Department of Labor at the Office of Disability Employment Policy, I consistently used APSE resources to inform my work, and that continues to today. Allison was one of the first people that I called when I got in this job. So again, I'm very grateful to you all and all the work that you do. Just so you're all aware, in the past month, I have given a speech from a throne, given a speech while sitting on a floor, and this is my first time at a table like this, so if the sound blows out, if a speaker blows out, if we lose sound, we're just gonna roll with it, okay? I also, while prepping for this, checked with Allison, and she told me that you all usually do karaoke, and that you would not be doing karaoke. And as a karaoke fan, this is really upsetting to me. So I may or may not have intentionally made my remarks shorter so that we could do some group karaoke at the end. So, who's up for some Journey? Yeah? What about some Garth Brooks? Yeah? Okay. Honestly, my karaoke go-to is Cher, but I will not subject you to that. So, in all seriousness, in addition to karaoke, I want to talk with you all about the progress that we have made when it comes to disability employment and disability rights, and talk with you all about the President's commitment to creating access to opportunity and economic security for all Americans. And as I begin, I want to ask you all a question. How many of you have ever had a moment when you realized you were poor? Right? Maybe for some of you there was never a moment. Maybe you just always knew you were poor. Maybe for some of you the moment happened when you've got your first couple of jobs and you cannot figure out how to make ends meet no matter how hard you try. Maybe for others of you, that moment came after you had children and the income that worked for you or you and your spouse just couldn't be spread any further. For me, that moment came when I started high school. I went to a public high school in Louisiana. Anyone from Louisiana in here? One person? Wow. Okay. And it had a very strict uniform code. Now, this hadn't been a problem coming from elementary and junior high, because all those kids there were public school kids like me. The high school is where the folks from the private schools and the Catholic schools and the public schools, they all come together. And so while my uniforms were from Walmart, I had peers who had uniform khakis from brands I'd never heard of. Abercrombie, American Eagle, Hollister, right? Can you tell I grew up in like the late 90s? And it may seem insignificant, but that was really one of the first cues I had that my experience growing up may not have been similar to my peers. And it is really a testament to my mother and the environment that she created for my brothers and I that I didn't realize it up until that point. So what had my experience been? When I was growing up, I was on SSI from the very beginning. I am one of 3, and both of my brothers have disabilities. And when my parents got divorced, my mom knew that she needed to get a career where she could support us all. So she went back to school, to nursing school full time. And again, she had 3 kids with disabilities, all under the age of 8. And my childhood was very similar to many other childhoods of those with disabilities. I had lots of doctors and surgeries, and I had attendant care that was covered by Medicaid waivers. And unfortunately, that's not possible in Louisiana right now. But I didn't realize that it was unusual to have kind people from the Episcopal Church dropping groceries off at your front door. I didn't realize that it's strange to have some of the most stable people in your life be a social worker and a physical therapist. But that's who it was for me. And while my experiences were very dissimilar to the students that I was in high school with in mainstream classrooms, my experiences were not dissimilar from the majority of Americans with disabilities across the country, right? Because disability can be both a cause and a consequence of poverty. Disability can lead to job loss for many people, reduced earnings, right? Barriers to education and skills gains opportunities that can usually build up a ladder of opportunity. It can also be a consequence of poverty, because poverty and income insecurity can limit access to things like healthcare and preventive services and supports. So disability and poverty, they go hand in hand. And the US Census Bureau's annual reporting finally captures this information for the first time. As of 2013, working age people with disabilities, 34.5% of them are living at or below the poverty level. And that's compared to 12.2% of people without disabilities. And even when we look at people with disabilities who are working full time, those disparities continue to persist. You have 8.9% of people with disabilities who are working full time at incomes at or below the poverty line. And I wanted to open with poverty because so much of the president's agenda and his legacy has been focused on increasing opportunities for all Americans and really building up the middle class. And so when we look at all of the progress that has been made in connection to poverty in general, we have to do that and think about disability at the same time. So in terms of the president's legacy on poverty, we've been working really hard to restore economic security to those families who were hit really hard when the economy crashed in 2009. We have been working to make sure that young people have opportunities for training and can really fulfill their potential. And the president recognizes that when kids grow up in poverty, like me and my brothers, it costs our country money. It costs our country dollars in lost wages and productivity. 4% of our GDP, they say, is lost to poverty. So the problem of poverty is really the responsibility for all Americans to address. And I think we would say the same thing when it comes to something like disability inclusion. So looking at the kind of jobs record, and you hear a lot of discussion about this in the news, this month we added 280,000 jobs. And that's the highest addition of jobs on record since the president took office. Thanks, guys. overall, we've added 12.3 million new jobs in 62 months. And what I want to see is many of those opportunities going to the 56 million Americans who have disabilities. And after 25 years of the ADA, being very honest with you guys, we're still not seeing this progress being translated. I'm sure that across your week, you've heard a lot about the disability employment statistics, so I'm not going to go over them again. But when we look at the workforce participation rates of people with disabilities as compared to people without, we are really far behind. But I'm happy to say that the president's accomplishments in the context of disability have been super focused on disability employment. In 2009, he issued the Year of Community Living. And in the next year, he established the Administration on Community Living. I believe that you all heard from Sharon Lewis maybe yesterday and heard about the great work that they're doing. In 2010, he passed an executive order which required the federal government to become a model employer for people with disabilities. And 5 years into that executive order, we have more people with disabilities working in the federal government than ever before. Now this is big for a number of reasons. It's big numbers-wise, but it's also big because the president issued an additional executive order last year, which raised the federal minimum wage to $10.10. So that means all of these people with disabilities are earning that wage. And it also applies to federal contractors. On the note of federal contractors, we issued the Section 503 regulations, which require all contractors to have a 7% utilization goal of people with disabilities. So that means that their goal needs to be 7% of people with disabilities in their workforce. And there are additional requirements for reporting and records keeping, which create better structures for accountability. One of my favorite sayings is, what gets measured gets done. So we're setting up structures so that people don't just have to say there's not enough data to talk about disability employment, right? We are building structures to collect and create that data. A big highlight of my morning on the train up here is when I found out that the Supreme Court has held up the Affordable Care Act. Woo! Yeah. Thanks, Obama. And with the ACA, we have, I think, a total of 16 million Americans who have health care now that could have never had health care before. 2 of them are my brothers. 1 of them is my father. In sum, if everyone were able to access the health care that the ACA provided them, I think we would have 129 million Americans accessing health care who could have never accessed it before, which is amazing. Newer kind of areas of achievement for the Obama administration has been the Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act. What this does is it creates new pathways for vocational training and technical education for people with disabilities. And it shifts the way that we look at what job training means and what skill development means. What you hear the president say a lot is that the path out of poverty is a job. I'm going to modify that statement a little bit. I'm going to say that the path out of poverty is a career, right? A career that's filled with meaning and where you're paid at least a living wage. And the reason I say that is because in today's economy, young people especially don't intend to stay in one job for their entire lives. Millennials expect to change jobs at least 5 times over the course of their lifetime. And that's very different than our parents. And part of that expectation maybe comes from how they've lived life, but it also comes from the acknowledgement that a lot of jobs you find today are contract-based. They're not kind of the traditional federal jobs that you found for life. And so we have to be equipping everyone with the skills that they need to not only get a job and keep a job, but understand how the skills they need to go where they want to go next. and to continue doing what they want to do. In the disability community, when we talk about the dignity of risk, everyone needs to be able to take a risk, right, and pursue the career of their dreams, and WIOA helps us get there. Another big achievement is the home and community-based settings rule, which sets up opportunities for all people with disabilities, no matter how significant or severe, to access their communities, live in them, work in them, and thrive in them. And it creates an opportunity for individualization of service delivery. And one of my favorite elements of my new job is going out and talking to people like all of you and hearing their stories and hearing their concerns. And with the Affordable Care Act, with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, with the home and community-based settings rules, they are creating a new environment for Americans. They are creating new opportunities for us to really push the boundaries of what inclusion looks like. And I get so many questions and concerns because change can be scary. And so I want to salute you all for the work that you are doing, because you are really the people who are figuring out what this looks like, so that when I go and I talk to families in Ohio or families in Louisiana like mine, I can tell them that here is what the home and community-based settings rule looks like for you, and this is based on lessons learned from people who really support employment first. So it's significant for me to be sitting here speaking with you for more reasons than one. When I talk about the environment that my mother created for my brothers and I, it was one of high expectations. There was never a doubt in my mind that I would be able to work. How many of you know where kids get their information about careers? Is it from a skills inventory? No. As much as like the Department of Labor wants to believe that, that's not it. It's from their families and from TV. And now maybe we'd say the internet. But I think in the early 2000s, lots of kids wanted to go into forensic science thanks to CSI. But for me, my mom was a nurse. I didn't want to do that. And I really didn't have a plan for myself for a long time. And when I got to high school and again started to understand my own experiences with poverty, that was when I started to participate in the speech and debate team. And my school, like most schools, did not have a inclusive sports program. Speech and debate was my first time ever really on a team, and it was something that I was really good at. But if any of you have taken speech classes, there's a lot of ableism there, right? They teach you, my teacher would never be okay with me doing this speech, but they teach you that you have to stand up, right, super straight, and that you have to move at certain points in order to be an effective speaker. If my speech teacher saw me wearing Converse while delivering an address, oh my gosh, I would have gotten a B on that alone. So it was in this space that I became very conscious of these things and how to navigate them and how to ask for accommodations. It was also when delivering a speech about disability at the pushing of my teachers, right? I wanted to stay far away from disability. I wasn't told it was a bad thing, but I wasn't told it was a good thing either. And I did this speech on disability, and it had a profound impact on someone who was a sibling of a young woman with cerebral palsy, which is what I have. And when she talked to me about her experiences with her sister, I realized that my ability to give speeches was a skill and a talent and one that I needed to use. And I realized that advocacy could be a career and that I could be employed doing this. And it was really the moment when I connected employment and the dignity of employment to disability. that I became proud. And that is the difference between potential and reality. That is the difference between potential and pride. And so I really want to thank all of you, because you create those moments for individuals every single day. And ultimately, that uplifts the nation. Okay? Thank you all for being here today. I don't know if we have time for karaoke, but
Sure we do.
if any of you are willing, we have music and lyrics queued up.
Where's David Hall?
Where's David Hall?
Y'all have to come on stage.